Well, new faces, big expectations. Can the Bulldogs pass catchers finally stretch the field? We've got thoughts.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Jaron Spor. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon McBride. We've got another position preview show for you today. We're going to start out with the pass catchers, obviously the wide receiver room, but we also got the tight end room because that's an exciting one as well with a lot of transfer additions. Speaking of a lot of transfer additions, offensive line had a ton of transfer additions, totally overhauled that unit, also got a new offensive line coach, and so it was a bad unit last year. Will it be better this year? Will it better? We're going to talk about that a little later, but let's get into the wide receiver room. Again, this is not an official depth chart, but our lads does a great job at least getting a depth chart out there.
Giving you an idea.
Yeah. And so they have the three starting wide receivers. They have Jordan Mosley, Brenen Thompson, Anthony Evans the third. Obviously, Brenen Thompson, Anthony Evans are both transfers this year. Mosley was a transfer, but has been at Mississippi State. Yeah. The funny thing that I saw in their top let's go through their top 9. Let's see. 2 of them were here last year, and that was Jordan Mosley and that was Ricky Johnson. Outside of that, it's Marcus Allen, a transfer, Aiden Williams, a transfer, Cam Thompson, a transfer, Jaron Glover, a transfer, and then Grayson Harris, who's a true freshman. So lots of new faces.
Yeah, I saw something that said like 4 of the projected top 5 are all new this year. So it's a whole new group, and we mentioned it before when we started this. They brought in some speed. Brenen Thompson is fast. Anthony Evans, he does not have a lot of stats in terms of receiving, but also he's very fast. And when you look at some of Thompson's receiving, like yards per reception, his freshman year at Texas only had the 1 reception, but it was 32 yards. His first year at Oklahoma, 34.4 yards per reception.
And interesting enough, that was the year with Levy, the last year with Levy.
Yeah. So, and then the next year, it obviously went down to 12.4, still a very good number for yards per reception. But yeah, I think he's probably going to end up maybe not where he plays on the field, but stat-wise, I think he's your wide receiver 1. I mean, some of that's obviously tipped off from him going to media days, but yeah, I think that's your wide receiver 1, and he's a very explosive wide receiver 1.
It's interesting because Brenen Thompson is still, and I know he's been in college 3 years, he's a raw prospect because he was a quarterback in high school. It was one of those smaller Texas high schools where your quarterback just did everything, or really your best player. He just made your best player your quarterback, and he did everything. Regardless if he was an actual quarterback, it was just get this guy the ball and let him just do whatever. And that's the high school he came from. So when he came to college at Texas, and especially early on at Oklahoma, he couldn't run really any routes because he wasn't a wide receiver in high school. And then his last year at Oklahoma started getting a little more comfortable with the route tree. Obviously, they lost their top 5 wide receivers early in the year, so he was thrown into a bigger role. You would have liked to have bigger numbers, but the offense was terrible at Oklahoma in 2024. 230 yards receiving, only 2 touchdowns. Didn't really have many big plays like you mentioned before, where the 32 yards per catch at Texas, 34.4 in Oklahoma, his first year there, like I said, under Levy. Outside of that, he didn't have this monster receiving yards or yards per reception year. So he's obviously the guy that we think is the leader of the room. Is he the best player? He's the best fit for the offense. I'll put it that way. Jordan Mosley obviously had a strong year last year, 405 yards receiving, 23 catches, 3 touchdowns, 17.6 yards per catch. So he had a strong year, and that was by far his best year because before that he had 45 yards in 23, 43 yards in 22, 7 yards in 21. So he didn't have much production. Anthony Evans, you mentioned 9 catches, 88 yards last year. He's had 13 catches for 123 and 1 touchdown his whole career at Georgia. But he was mainly used as a punt returner, and so we'll get to more of the specialists later on, but that's where we think he will be valuable. But the thing I will say about Anthony Evans, people might not remember, he was committed to Oklahoma and Jeff Levy in 2023 in that recruiting class before switching to Georgia. He and Brenen Thompson fit the receiver that Levy wants.
Yeah, and this is a big year for Anthony Evans because, he was at Georgia. We heard, oh, this guy's explosive. This guy's so fast, blah, blah. But he never really did much in terms of receiving. So that's a big thing for him. He's going to have.
And the big question was Georgia led the nation in drops, and he still couldn't get on the field.
Right. So that's
not great.
Huge year for him. And I will say the one thing that I don't know if it kind of concerns me a little bit. I know this is kind of how Levy runs his offense, is he typically does not have a big receiver. But when your top three guys we expect are 5'9", 170, 5'11", 180, and 6 foot 195, that's a little concerning. You want a couple guys that are a little bit bigger. And so I won't be surprised if we see Aiden Williams out there, kind of almost as also wide receiver 3. It's kind of a slash, depends on the package. Because he's a bigger body. He's 6'2", 210, I think, is a 205. So 205, 210, also a transfer.
and Marcus Allen and Ricky Johnson are both 6'2", so you might see them on the field a little more because you don't want a bunch of small receivers out there for sure.
Yeah, so I think you'll see a little bit more of at least 2 of those guys coming out there a lot because we also know Levy really likes to spread the field to get those advantageous looks both in coverage and running the ball. So all of these, probably the top 6 receivers are going to play a lot. This is not a team that's just going to run your same 3, maybe 4 wide receivers. Those top 6, 7 are going to be out there all the time.
Yeah, and an interesting one also is Jaron Glover. He's 6'1", 205. He played at Mississippi State 2 years, 261 yards receiving his first year, 192 and 2 touchdowns last year. Michigan State's not this great offensive team, and so it's hard to pin those on him, not having this great numbers. But yeah, as far as the receiver Levy wants, he wants speed. They want you to beat you from afar. That's kind of their saying. That's what they do. And so all this fits, and it's guys that Brenen Thompson was really successful under Levy. Anthony Evans originally was going to go with Levy, so obviously it's someone Levy really liked. But the biggest concern for me with Anthony Evans is what I mentioned. Georgia's receiving group was terrible last year. They led the nation in drops, and he still couldn't get on the field. That's a concern. Now, with that being said, Mike Bobo doesn't hold a candle to Jeff Levy as an offensive play caller. He's not a good play caller. He's not a good offensive coordinator. And Georgia fans will tell you that. So it's not like a Mississippi State fan hating. Many of them will tell you. There's one guy on the Paul Feinbaum that calls him Bobo the Bozo. That's how much he does not like him. So that's not me just hating or something. That's just what the reality of it is. And Jeff Levy's obviously one of the best play callers in the sport. So it'll be interesting to see. We talked about Shapen yesterday. Obviously, he's going to be a big factor of it. We're going to talk about the offensive line later on. You got to give them time so these guys can get down the field. Because if they don't give them time, the speed doesn't matter.
Yeah, and also, despite the play calling of Mike Bobo, Evans just fits what Levy does far better than what they try to do at Georgia. So I think even taking play calling out of the fact, it's a better fit here. And then also, you mentioned Thompson had his best year under Levy. Mosley had his best year in his 1 year under Levy last year. So, he's clearly is putting these receivers in good positions. So they just have to go out there and, not drop the ball and hope the offensive line gives them enough time to get down the field, really.
And that's the sign of a great play caller and offensive coordinator. You put your guys in the best position to succeed. And you saw that with Mosley. Wasn't successful before Levy, had a successful year. Brenen Thompson hasn't really been successful before or even after Levy because Levy left. But that 1 year at Oklahoma with Levy, he was successful. And he, again, was a guy that was kind of a gadget guy that year because he was so raw to the position. Oklahoma had a ton of returning receivers, but still had a really strong season that year. So we'll see what ends up happening going forward. But yeah, it should be an exciting room because, again, this is a team with a lot of speed, and that's what Levy likes. So All right, we got to talk about the tight end position because that's also going to factor into the pass catching. It's also going to factor into the offensive line that we're going to break down later on because you need some pass blockers at the tight end position, especially in the Levy offense. What tight end do we think is going to lead the room, and is there one that's not being talked about enough that needs to be? We'll talk about that a little later. Well, have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends? It's game day, and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Again, I love the panoramic seat views. That's always been my favorite thing. I love to know where I'm going to sit, what I'm going to see when I'm there, so I don't have to go search all these different websites, the stadium or whatever, to figure out what my seat view will be like. I love that Gametime gives me access to that right at the tip of my fingers, and it makes it so much easier and a quicker process. And on top of that, like they said, I love that the ticket prices go down when it gets closer to the game, because maybe if you want to go, don't worry about the prices. It's going to actually come down. Take the guesswork out of buying ticket time. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. A part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so we got to get to the tight end position. There are more pass catchers, but also help with the line of scrimmage game a little bit. Seydou Traore is obviously the favorite to be the starter, and he's the projected starter on our lads. He had 361 yards, 34 catches, 1 touchdown last year. Had a really strong year. Again, first year with Levy. We were just talking about that with Brenen, Thompson, and Mosley. He was second on the team in receptions. He was a little farther down in receiving yards, but he's obviously, with the receptions, showing you that they like to use that position a lot.
Yeah, he is. Then this is, like you mentioned it, a lot of kind of some unknowns here. A lot of guys who have had some production, but nothing that makes you excited from a term of past performance. There's a lot of excitement in this room, but it's what people could be more than what they are. And I do think, and I honestly don't know if his name is pronounced Traore or Traore, because one of my favorite soccer players is last name so like that, and it's pronounced Traore, so that's what I've been assuming it is. But I think he ends up leading the room, in receptions, being that number one guy. Cameron Ball is a guy who I think is going to play a lot, but he's more of your inline blocker. He doesn't add too much in the receiving game. I mean, you just look at his numbers. He had played 12 games last year and had no receptions. And the year before that, played 10 games and had 8 receptions. So he's really just almost your sixth offensive lineman.
Yeah, he is. Another guy that I really like is Sam West. Sam West from Indiana. He actually transferred in from Indiana. Yeah. He didn't play a whole lot of Indiana. In fact, he only had 1 catch, but it was for 37 yards. Didn't play a whole lot. I mean, more in the passing game. He was used as an inline blocker because he played in all 13 games. But he's a guy that I've read a lot of reports from practices and stuff, and they are very high on him. They think he is having a really strong summer. Now, with that being said, kind of what we talked about yesterday, everyone has had a great summer, and everyone's having their best summer they've ever had, and so on and so forth. But I am really high on him as a player this year. At worst case, I just think he's going to be a great addition to the at least the blocking schemes and opening up holes for your running backs and things like that, and even in the quarterback running game. Because the one thing we've seen with Levy, and again, he did this back at Oklahoma as well, so it's not hindsight. He loves running 2 wide receivers, or 2 tight ends. I mean, he loves the tight ends. One needs to be a pretty good blocker, but also a really good pass catcher, which we think Seydou will be. The other one needs to be a great blocker. yes, he can get out there and catch the ball some, but he needs to be a great blocker. He needs to be that they kind of use him like an H-back type of role.
Right.
That's what I think Sam West could be. And I know on the depth chart on our lads, he's listed way down the list. Like he's listed fourth string. Max Reese is ahead of him. Cameron Ball's ahead of him. But the funny thing, all 5 guys on the list were transfers at one point on the tight end list. So that's crazy how much they've changed the position. I do like Max Reese a lot. Obviously, he had a strong season last year, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns at Eastern Michigan. And he was highly coveted, and he's 6'3", 250, big body. I think they just have a lot of guys. Like, I think Seydoux is the clear best player in the group. But after that, I think they got a lot of guys that are very similar in terms of talent level. Not necessarily skills, because, like, Max is a better receiver, Sam's a better blocker. Like, not necessarily skills, but just talent level. And I think that really bodes well for you because you can throw a lot of different bodies out there. And we talked about with the receivers how a lot of them are shorter. You could split one of these guys out wide and do some things like that.
Yeah, and that's something I think we could really see with Max Reese is him maybe moving into being kind of that big slot. Because, I mean, at Eastern Michigan, 232 yards, 8.6 yards per reception, and they've tried to run the ball with him both years while he was there. Not great success, average total of -1 yards, but hey, they tried. So I think he's a guy who you can watch maybe be kind of like that big like power slot, kind of overmatch the smaller defenders, because he's clearly got some juice there. And yeah, Sam West also. And the fact that both those guys are going to be around after this year. I mean, Reese
should be, yeah.
Reese, assuming they don't transfer, Reese is junior, West is sophomore. There's your
Ball's a junior.
Ball's a junior.
And Meg is a junior.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that should be here. They overhauled this room, but provided these guys perform well, your room's set up for the next 2 years pretty much. So I really like the direction this is headed. We're going to see there's a lot of question marks on who ends up at the top of this room, but there's a lot of potential here, and they've done a lot of good work. Yeah,
for sure. So we'll see what they end up going with on opening day, but I think it's an exciting room. Obviously, you have all the new transfer additions to go along with some of the guys that have been there already. So it's unclear who's going to be that. I believe, Seydoux will be the starter, but who will be that guy behind them? It's kind of unclear to see. And just how they use each of them differently because they all bring different kind of assets. My guess would be Reese would kind of be the backup to Seydoux's kind of spot. Whereas Cameron and Sam West are going to be kind of the next guy. The guy that's going to be the more blocking one, whereas Max and Seydoux are going to be the more receiving ones who can block kind of thing. So I think they're going to kind of play a couple different spots. But we got to get into the offensive line. That's Landon and I's one of our favorite positions to talk about, especially. But they overhauled that room completely, including a new coach. But will it matter in the long run? We're going to talk about that coming up next. Well, ever wish managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One of the things that I noticed by using Monarch Money was I was spending way too much on food delivery services. I can't be the only one, especially since COVID happened. That's been one of the crazes. I do it all the time. Ultimately decided it was way too much money and I need to just drive down the street and not be lazy and go get my food or need to start cooking some more. So that was the big thing that I realized. And with me just getting married, my wife and I were able to kind of budget with using Monarch Money and see the things that we were spending on that was okay and some of the things that we need to cut back on. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so obviously we know last year was not a good year for the offensive line. It was it was a terrible, terrible season. That resulted in a new offensive line coach, Phil Loadholt, coming in. It also resulted in
A whole lot of new transfers.
6 transfers. So just kind of going off our lads starting lineup, they have, let's see, they have 2 of the transfers coming in and starting. So what's kind of your expectation for the offensive line?
I think they'll be better, but part of that is it would be hard to be worse. So, but honestly, looking at this depth chart, the projections, both from our lads, just any article you find, I have no idea how this is going to shake out in the end.
Yeah, because I'm looking at our lads, and I don't think that's how it's going to shake out at all.
The only one that I feel very confident in being a starter is Blake Steen, and I feel like he's your right tackle. He played right tackle at Virginia. Virginia. I was about to say Virginia Tech. He was starting right tackle last year. So I figure you pencil him in there. Luke Work was starting left tackle as a freshman. So, if he continued to improve, Loadholt likes what he sees, you can probably pencil him in there. I think it's center. Brendan Smith ends up being the starter.
He's got too. It has Kobe Keenum as the starter but I think Brendan Smith will be the starter.
And I'm pretty sure Jacoby Jackson ends up as a starter, but I don't feel great making that prediction just because maybe he moves to the other side of the line and you start someone else at left guard. There's just so many new pieces, and Loadholt coming in the spring doesn't help us have more clarity about where things stand.
Yeah, and my favorite one is Jaquan Bolden, who has the 4th-string right tackle on here, but he's my favorite, and I've talked about him many times.
Yeah, I love him too.
He was obviously very successful in his limited playing time at Purdue because he kind of was banged up, but I love his size at 6'6", 340 pounds. Like I just think he's a guy that could make an immediate impact for them. Mm-hmm. I understand why Kobe Keenum is the projected starter at center because he played at Kentucky, so he has some SEC experience. But I think Brendan Smith was better personally, even though it was at UTEP. I think he was better. And then interesting to see what happens on some of the other positions. Zach Owens is a guy, he was at Colorado with Loadholt. Now he's at Mississippi State. So where does he factor in on the inside? They have him as 3rd-string right guard right now. Does he end up working his way into some playing time as well? That's still, remains to be seen. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I think you got a lot of guys that you really like. Trevor Mayberry's another one that I really like. He was at Stanford, was at Penn also. Like there's just a lot of things I like about him as well. I just think, and we talked about this when all these signings were happening, I think they have so many guys where I don't think they have these dominant guys, but I think they have so many guys that are about the same skill level. Right. And that's really good for a team because then you can, all right, I'll play this guy here. Then, he's struggling. Okay, I'll put in this guy. And I don't have to hesitate because they're all about the same skill level. Well, it just depends on what kind of game they're having. Is he focused and getting all the plays right and where he's supposed to be and all that? Because if he's not, boom, this other guy's in. But I just think that gives you more flexibility as an offensive line coach.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of size, which we mentioned every time they brought in one of these transfers. They're just a giant human being. Like even for lineman size, they're big. And some of the foot speed does kind of worry me. I mean, these guys have done it. Like Steen, he's done it. But there is some concern when you get guys that big. Do they have the foot speed to stay on the outside or do they need to move inside? So that is something to watch. But like I said, Steen, expect him to be the right tackle. He's done it. So I have no worries about him. It's just kind of some of these other guys they brought in. Where do they fit? Did they just get big guys and they're all going to have to end up moving the interior and there's going to be a log jam? That's kind of something to look at for.
And this group is going to determine the season, in my opinion.
Because
it's going to make or break it.
You don't give shape and time. It doesn't matter how good the receivers are. If you don't open holes, doesn't matter how good the running backs are.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith is the latest rumors, portal entries, and sightings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over at Athlon Sports. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Post daily videos Monday through Friday. We're going to try to this week, but probably not going to be able to post those daily videos. Obviously, the podcast will be on YouTube, but the shorts, just because we both have a lot going on this week and traveling and things like that. And so I'm not sure we'll be able to, but we still will post a question every single day. Again, like I said, with the traveling, we're going to try to respond. We will try to get to all the responses, but we might be a little slower than we usually are. But yeah, so hang with us for this week. After this week, we're full go. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.